Who is Rose Wamaitha Ngote and why is she trending? For many Kenyans, Rose Wamaitha Ngote was an unfamiliar name tucked away in the quiet corners of the business registry. But that changed dramatically in July 29, 2025. In a country used to political fireworks and rotational scandal cycles, this particular revelation detonated with unusual heat. Why? Because Rose Wamaitha Ngote didn't trend alone. Her name now sits beside royalty, Kenyan royalty, that is, the Kenyatas. Now, it began with whispers of a tax dispute, but what followed was a full-blown expose, a scandal woven with corporate veils, murky land deals, and an 88 billion mega project, the Nairobi Expressway. At the heart of it is a quiet land transfer on March 26, 2021, while President Uhuru Kenyatta was still in power.
We're cabinet secretaries in the Ministry of Defense, while we also have our First Lady General Officer, Major General Fatuma Ahmed.
Now that day, Rose Wamaitha Ngote was registered as the sole shareholder of Edgeworth Properties Limited, a company previously owned by Rupert Trust. What looked like a straightforward paperwork shuffle turned out to be the keystone in a scheme that now reads like a boardroom thriller. Soon after the transfer, Edgeworth Properties handed over land to KEL Infrastructure, the Chinese firm behind the expressway construction, granting access to mine sand and dump debris for the mammoth project in their land. That land was valuable, the opportunity golden, and the deal suspiciously smooth. But here's the twist. Rose Wamaitha Ngote wasn't the real boss of Edgeworth Properties. Reports now allege she was merely a placeholder, a smiling silhouette fronting for the true power brokers, none other than the Kenyatta family themselves. A Rupert Trust, which handed her the company, is linked directly to the Kenyatas. The so-called transition of ownership was more of a family circle dance, shares passing from one hand to another under the guise of legal distance. Then emerged NK Investments, an unassuming but powerful name in the Kenyatta corporate stable. NK Investments, believed to be founded by former First Lady Mama Ngina Kenyatta and her son Muhoho in 1989, had long operated behind layers of proxies and trusts. But in 2022, it stepped into the story more boldly. Edgeworth Properties, that same company supposedly owned by Rose Wamaitha Ngote, declared a cool 1 billion Kenyan shillings in dividends. And who received the windfall? Well, your guess is good as mine. NK Investments. Now the question hanging heavy in the air is, how could NK Investments reap profits from a company owned on paper by a private individual with no visible ties to them? Now the answer came wrapped in a taxman's envelope. In July 2024, the Kenya Revenue Authority KRA slapped Edgeworth Properties with a tax demand of 249.2 million Kenyan shillings. Among the issues was a questionable expense claims for leveling land after sand mining and more damning interest-free loans issued to shareholders, presumed to be Rose Wamaitha herself. Now these were flagged as undeclared fringe benefits, triggering a pay-as-you-earn liabilities. Now Edgeworth cried foul. Rose Wamaitha Ngote claimed innocence, and in a dramatic twist, she submitted evidence to the tax appeal tribunal revealing she was never the true owner of Edgeworth Properties. Her role, she claimed, was being a trustee. She argued holding shares on behalf of NK Investments, a reluctant proxy court in a web span long before her name ever made headlines. With her testimony, the veil was lifted. NK Investments could no longer hide in the shadows. The Kenyatas were now firmly in the spotlight, and their billion-shilling ghost dance with public infrastructure was laid bare. Well, why does this matter? Because back in 2021, when President Uhuru Kenyatta was still president, he stood at a podium and warned public servants and their families against doing businesses with the government. He even demanded full wealth disclosures from them and their families.
The root of this malady is what I would call a conflict of interest. I believe going forward, parastatal chiefs should not be in a position to use their offices to advance their private businesses. Those in the arena of road traffic regulation, kama tumeambiwa hapa, should not at the same time be players in the industries that they supervise.
It was a move hailed as noble, a supposed war cry against corruption.
Kwa hivyo kama ni polisi, jameni muamue. Wewe unataka kuwa mwenye matatu na ni sawa, lakini uniform weka chini. Huwezi kuwa officer ambaye anashika gari kwa barabara, alafu wewe pia ndio officer ambaye ndio mwenye gari. You cannot police yourself. Kwa hivyo, I think we need to be very clear on that. And in line with the proposals made by this forum, I am today directing the Honorable Attorney General to prepare a bill that will address the question of conflict of interest and unintended consequences that arose from the Degwa Commission report of 1971, as well as prohibiting any action by any state or public officer that creates a conflict of interest, due loyalties, or an advantage over other persons who do not hold such offices. For example, with due respect to members of parliament, including senators, they should no longer be able to use committee powers to demand information from public offices and then utilize that same information in their own pursuits. State and public officers will have a simple choice: serve in the public arena or go and do private business.
But behind the Russia's facade, a silent empire was expanding, harvesting sand, collecting dividends, and building fortunes on public contracts. While the president preached to water, it turns out his family was sipping vintage wine, toasting profits from the very system they vowed to clean. Now, Rose Wamaitha Ngote, once invisible, has become the unlikely face of a scandal that tugs at the moral seams of power, privilege, and hypocrisy in Kenya. As for the Kenyatta name, already heavy with history, it now bears a fresh layer of controversy.